right. So hello, everyone, and welcome to our GoodPup webinar this month on enrichment with the goal of keeping our dogs happy and preventing potential problems. We are so excited to present this to you. Many of you know me, but I am the COO and co-founder here at GoodPup. My name is Lisa Martin Garlick. GoodPup is a service that connects dog owners with certified positive reinforcement dog trainers via video chat for our training. And our mission is to make quality science-based training affordable and available to everybody and all dog owners. We were founded in 2017 and have trained over 50,000 dogs. So you are in good hands. We've launched our shelter initiative I guess 2 years ago now in 2020, with the goal to provide access to our training to all adopters and fosters to facilitate more successful dog adoptions and to give support to all adopters and fosters. We'll talk a little bit more about that later in the webinar, but we launched this webinar series because there are many topics that we cover with our dog owners that we heard would be very helpful to cover with other members of the shelter community, including those that work in the shelters, and enrichment is just one of those topics. So a reminder that you can attend live, which we absolutely love, but also we will be recording this and you can share it within your shelters or your communities to make sure everyone has access to this information. Also exciting tonight, we will also provide all live attendees with a PDF that covers some of the do-it-yourself enrichment ideas because there is a lot of content in this webinar and we want to be able to give you something to take home with you and be able to use to reference. So very excited about that as well. To present this webinar, we have Kate Hembry. Kate is the head of training and behavior here at GoodPup, and she's been with us this whole time. Before that, she spent 20 years in the industry as both a certified veterinary technician and a professional dog consultant. She's a CBT with a specialty in behavior and a Karen Pryor graduate. We're so lucky to have her. And with that, I'm going to hand it over. I will mute and turn my video off, but I will be monitoring chat and the Q&A. Take it away, Kate.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Lisa, thank you for that nice introduction, as always. Welcome back, hopefully, to some of you, and welcome to some newbies. So excited to have you guys here. Very quickly, some housekeeping things, questions. If you can withhold them until the end, that would be great. We will try to do a question and answer after we wrap up. And then if you are worried about forgetting, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll do our best to keep track of them. Also, as Lisa mentioned, I live in a tiny little town in the mountains of North Carolina, so my internet likes to be a bit sporadic. So if suddenly you can't hear or see me, just hang tight, I will be back. All right, let's go ahead and get started talking tonight about our enrichment, keeping our dogs happy and preventing potential problems by using enrichment. So our agenda tonight, when we're going to be talking, we're going to cover a couple of things. First, we're going to talk about what enrichment is, and then we're going to talk about why we want to be using it. And then lastly, in the big part in most of our webinar tonight is going to be focused on a variety of components that play a part in enrichment in one way or another. So to start with, when we talk about what is enrichment, most of you are probably familiar with this term. If you're probably already doing many of these things already in your rescues or doing them at home with your own dogs. But enrichment is a range of activities designed to provide mental and physical stimulation to satisfy the specific daily normal needs for species. Tonight, obviously, we'll be focusing on dogs, but what I want you guys to walk away from this is that specifically when we talk about enrichment, the goal of it is to satisfy what that dog would be doing normally during the day if we weren't around, okay? So that leads us right into why do we want to be using it? Well, if you think about all the things that dogs do to provide themselves with various outlets, and specifically things they might do to expend that energy when they're out and about doing their own thing, without us, right? So left to their own devices, dogs are busy, right? They would be foraging for food. They would be digging or chewing probably on whatever they would like to. They would be playing or chasing things. They would be looking for shelter. compared to what they would normally be doing and what, or I would say the normal dog in our households, it's a lot more. It's a lot more involved, right? And so the point of us using enrichment is because we can provide some appropriate outlets physically and also for our dog's brains to help them be productive, to prevent them from getting bored, right? And really ultimately from preventing them from needing to fulfill that enrichment, that normal need by doing things that we might not find so great, right? And so it will help us prevent problems. So really by providing enrichment for our dogs, we do three big things for them. We are affecting their overall well-being. They are happier because we are providing for them what they would be doing daily in a normal setting to meet their needs, right? So they're happier both mentally and physically by being more engaged. This also reduces stress, which helps our mental well-being. And as we all know, also influences physical health. Also, the other thing was when we have dogs, when we're helping their overall well-being and when they have the engagement they need, they tend to be more relaxed. They have calmer demeanors and really have more interest in appropriate social interactions, which is a huge benefit, especially in our rescue environments, right? The other big reason we want to be using enrichment is because they enjoy it. They like it, right? We're fulfilling a need for them. They get to have control over some of their own activities in their environment. And they're making a positive connection to things in their environment because they're enjoying it, right? So the situation they may be in, what's surrounding them, people or dogs, and that's really beneficial. And then lastly, as I mentioned, we are preventing the potential development of some problem behaviors, or what we might see as problem behaviors as humans, if our dogs find alternative ways to fulfill those mental and physical needs if we're not satisfying them. So again, what is enrichment? Well, it's mental and physical stimulation that is going to help our dogs be satisfied, right? It's basically replacing those specific daily normal needs that they would have if they were left to their own devices. And ultimately, we're influencing their overall well-being, their enjoyment, and preventing some potential problems. Now, let's dive into kind of the heart of our webinar tonight, where we're going to talk about a couple of different components of enrichment. Some of these you might not think are involved with enrichment, but they all are in one way or another. And so we're going to talk about that. My goal tonight is really to provide you guys with a wealth of ideas that you can use at your rescues. You can use at home. You can pass on to adopters, your volunteers. Some of these things may not be feasible in your rescue environment. Maybe they work in your home environment. Or maybe they're just ideas that you can modify and make work for you. And of course, really the meat of our presentation is going to be talking about a lot of these fun ways we can interact with our dogs. So components again. First one, structure and routine. I know some of you may be thinking, that's not enrichment, but it is intertwined. So we'll go there in a second. Second thing we'll be talking about tonight, social enhancement. We'll also be talking about physical exercise and cognitive engagement. That's a big one. And that will really kind of be the meat of our presentation. And then of course, let's not forget training, right? So all of these are going to be important parts of enrichment for us. And again, my goal is to just present a bunch of different ideas for you guys, and hopefully you find some new ones that you can use. So let's go ahead and start with structure and routine. This is a common one that a lot of people don't think about being a part or in enrichment, but really it is. It's intertwined substantially with enrichment. And I want to talk about a couple things of how they're intertwined, right? The effectiveness, the anticipation and cultivation that structure and routines intertwine with enrichment. So when we look at structure and routine, effective, let's talk about that. When we think about structure and routine in our homes, we work a lot with people to do that. I'm sure you guys too, especially when dogs are adopted, right? One, for safety, And two, it helps us manage things we might not want to have started in a home or prevent things we're trying to stop in a home, right? Management and structure are very big, and routine can also be part of that. Both of those, and specifically that structure, right, is much more effective with the help of or influence of our enrichment items, right? So for example, if I've got a new dog in the home and I have guests coming home over and I'm working on my dog not performing behaviors I don't want, but I need to be able to let my guest in and spend some time with them, I may decide to put my dog up in their crate while they come over. Why not use a food toy to help them have a positive, enjoyable experience in their crate while making an association for this is how we do things when people come over until I can work with them, right? So food toys are very effective at helping our structure in the household. Then secondly, when we look at routines of our structure, what we do on a daily basis for our dogs, we can talk about anticipation a little bit, right? What I really like to do is when I add enrichment to people as part of ideas or plans for training, I recommend that people try on certain parts of the enrichment to do them in a similar time frame. It doesn't have to be perfect, but somewhere close together, right? What I have found over the years, just like my dogs learn to anticipate when dinner is coming, because I know dogs can't tell time, but all of you know your dogs tell you when dinner is, and they tell you when breakfast is, right? There are different cues, different things that happen around them, but they're also anticipating it, right? My Dotson will start at 4:15, pacing and looking at me all cute, right? Yes, 15-year-old tells you have dinner. Exactly. So my point is that they know, right? They're looking forward to it. And if I can have my dog do that with my enrichment, they will start to anticipate it's going to happen. And just like with children, if they know something's going to happen, they're more likely to hold out for it, right? Which is going to decrease the risk that they're going to try to expend that energy or find a different way to meet their need doing something else, right? So using enrichment in a regular part of the structure can really help as far as my dogs learn to anticipate when it's coming. And then the last thing I want to bring up is when I incorporate enrichment as part of my structure, as part of my routine. So it's there, it's prevalent, it's really a part of the lifestyle we have with the dog. A lot of the enrichment we'll be talking about, some physical, but a lot of it is cognitive, right? It's intellectual. It works on getting my dog thinking, whether it be a food toy or it be an interactive play toy. My dog is having to think. They're having to use brain power. When I have a dog that is thinking, my thinking brain cannot operate at the same time that my emotional, over-aroused, hyperactive brain is, right? They're two different relays in the brain. So if I'm actually doing a fair amount of enrichment in my home on regular routine basis as part of everything we do, I'm actually cultivating a dog who's using their brain more, which means honestly, I'm cultivating a dog that's probably calmer and a little bit more in control of their emotions. And that's really what we're looking for, right? So when we talk about enrichment with volunteers, with staff, with adopters, anyone really, we do want to take into consideration the structure and routine in the home so that we can help the experience be as enriching as possible for the dog. Excuse me. Now, the second component we want to talk about is social enhancement. Now, I hemmed and hawed on words here, and I chose social enhancement over the word socialization for a couple reasons. Social enhancement, social interactions, it's another great way to enrich our dogs, getting them out in the world, exposing them to people and to places and to other things outside of their home, right? Socialization is also that, but socialization is specific to a certain time frame in a dog's life. And so I didn't want to refer to it as socialization, right? Specifically, socialization is that process that occurs between the ages of 3 and 14 weeks, and it involves preparing our dogs to be comfortable with daily interactions of life. Now, this doesn't mean we're going to stop social interactions at 14 weeks. It just means that we aren't referring to socialization, it as socialization after 14 weeks, okay? So I just wanna make that clear to everybody. Now, that being said, we are going to continue to enrich our dogs, ideally with social enhancement after 14 weeks. So let's talk about some ways we wanna go about doing that so that it is effective when we're out and about. So when we go out with our dogs, we want them to have a positive experience, right? So it is very important as far as going out for social interactions that we are proactive. So whether we're in socialization with a puppy, 10 weeks old, or Lisa's beating me to the punch here. Or if we are actually have a 10-month-old dog, we want to be proactive, right? We want to be prepared when we go out to help our dogs have a positive experience, right? Because the reality is this is about them not just building a relationship with you, but a relationship to life, a relationship to where you're going, to the people around them, to the hikers they meet on the trail, right? And so we want to be proactive as possible with treats, taking it slow with our dogs, letting them go at their own pace in order to establish that relationship and help them have a solid relationship with a positive experience. So after relationships, then it really comes down to exposing our dog, right? So we have socialization, and now at 14 weeks of age, we want to continue our social interactions. So we want to get them out there and expose them. And this is something we should be doing, and it should be part of our enrichment for our dogs. And really, we want it to be a large portion of that enrichment until our dogs are socially mature, which is generally between the ages of 2 to 3 years old, depending on the breed and the dog. So proactive when we're having social enrichment interactions, right? We want to do things positively, have treats, start slow. Don't overwhelm our dogs by taking them to a parade with 1,000 people. Start with 10 people at a restaurant. Eat on the outside. We want to build that relationship with them as positive as possible. And we want to continue to expose our dogs after the period of socialization until they're socially mature at age 2 to 3 years of age. So that means getting them out for those social interactions, saying hello to people, going on that hike, going for that car ride. And that's a big component in our enrichment, are those social interactions. Now, another one that a lot of people, of course, are going to think about is physical exercise for our dogs. And I know a lot of us are strategize quite a bit to come up with ways to keep our dogs physically active. There's a couple things we want to consider. So when we're looking to add physical exercise to our dog's life, it's ideal, general rule of thumb, to start somewhere between 30 minutes and 2 hours. But this is going to be different for every dog individually. And also we need to look at the dog's age, the dog's health, and the breed of the dog. All of those are very influential factors when we're considering physical exercise. I'm sure all of you have seen puppies at some point, right? And we know how busy they are. But if you think about puppies and how busy they are, it comes in short spurts. Even their zoomies or their excitement, it's like a burst, right? And then they crash after that. So for puppies, especially, our physical exercise may need to be short, frequent intervals, right? And we also want to be careful about how intense it is because they're still growing and that can influence them orthopedically. The same could be said for an older dog. If we're thinking about their physical exercise, we need to take into account how are their joints, how is their mobility before we get them out and doing things. Health is going to play a factor when you're considering exercise. It may be something you need to talk to your vet about as well. Depending on your dog, right? Do they have hip dysplasia? Have they ever had a traumatic injury? Are they a brachycephalic breed? All of these things may restrict the type of activity you decide on for them with physical exercise. Now, there is certainly something to be said for just the slow stroll or a safari, which we'll talk a little bit more down the way. Some dogs, that's all they need for their physical exercise. And then also too, we want to take into account our breed of dog, right? Certainly our border collies and our Belgian Malinois, for a couple examples, we might want to start at the high end of our physical exercise at the 2-hour mark and work our way up or down. But then we also have dogs like our bulldogs and our basset hounds. We'll probably start at 30 minutes and work our way up for physical exercise. But some dogs need more than others. And again, even if I'm looking at the breed, the health, and the age, think about the individual dog and what they enjoy as well and what they need. So all of that has to be taken into account. We all know that we do want to incorporate physical exercise into our dog's life, that it helps keep our joints mobile, it helps manage weight, it promotes mental clarity and helps with mood, all of this helping to prolong our dog's life. So very important. And I think one thing that can be hugely beneficial in the rescue environment as well is if you know your adoptees and what kind of physical exercise they require. And most of you already probably do this, but that can really help the match that they end up as far as the home they go to, right? It would be certainly not my recommendation for the majority of border collies I know to go to an apartment lifestyle, for example. Now, I do know several border collies who do just fine. Their owners are extremely active and they provide that specific daily normal need for them, even though they live in an apartment. Right? But these are things to consider. And one way that I think it could benefit you guys, if you knew this about your dogs, it might even be something you could list on the cage card, right? So adopters can see it coming in as far as the amount of exercise they need. Now let's talk about some of these exercises as well. So for outdoor activities, there's a ton out there, walking and hikes to start with, right? Great ways to do this. You can have short ones, long ones, slower ones, faster ones. The snafaris, those are some of the ones that I love. And a snafari, just so you guys are all aware, is when we actually take our dogs on a walk at their pace. We let them decide, and we allow them to sniff and smell any and everything they want to, within reason, of course. But the idea is to just let your dog go and explore and do what they would do if they were in their normal, natural environment without you, right? There's also been a lot of recent research on these as well that says sniffing in and of itself is very calming for dogs. So it really helps many of my dogs calm down, especially my dogs that might be a little bit amped up more than others on the leash. A snafari is a great way to start the walk and or end the walk as well. I did see somebody put in there a leash reactive question, and we will get to that at the end as well. Other great outdoor activities: running, cycling, skating. Of course, we want to take into account health of the dog when we look at this. This is pretty rigorous exercise. Safety, so we need the right equipment and training for this. There are many locations now in cities that have dog and people parks for running and cycling that are very safe. So those are certainly worth considering. Draft work. A lot of people don't think about that, but many, it's not just for sled dogs. A lot of dogs like to pull things, carts, sleds, weights. Again, there's some controversy around some of these. So think about the individual dog and what is appropriate for them. Dog sports. I listed some of the top ones: luring, agility, flyball, dock diving. Guys, there's so many now, I can't even keep up with them. Swimming is a great low impact exercise for our dogs, especially our older dogs, right? And of course, we have our standard fetch and tug, along with flirt poles, which is a newer product out there. If you guys aren't familiar with it, we're gonna look at one here a little bit further down, so you guys can see how we can use that as well, especially with some specific breed characteristics. Okay, now, what do we do with our dogs that are in those apartments or those high rises? Or maybe we just have inclement weather, it's too cold, we're supposed, like for this weekend, we're supposed to get 5 inches of snow. And we're not set up for snow, that much snow. But too hot too can be a problem, right? So there's a lot of things we can do inside to get physical activity that people forget about. Stairs is one of those things, fast or slow. Of course, again, you've got to think about your dog. I'm probably not going to take my 11-year-old Dachshund with a long back up and down stairs, right? But things to think about. Hide and seek is a great game, both mental and gets that dog moving physically, where the person hides and the dog looks for them. And there's different versions of hide and seek. We'll talk about some there will be some other versions further down too, but I am a fan of the one where the person hides and the dog seeks them out. Indoor treadmills now very popular. They even have these for cats. It's great. Fetch and tug, again, great games with foot pulls can be played inside. Hallways are terrific for this, especially the apartment building hallways. A lot of people also don't think about agility and obstacle courses inside. We're going to talk about some ways to make your own, pretty simple. And then last, my favorite is probably scent work, which any dog, any age, any breed can learn to enjoy. And we can do that pretty simple as well. We'll break that down a bit more here. Now, I did come up with a couple things that I thought were really unique to things you guys could use in the rescue environment. Hopefully you're already doing some of these. I'm sure you are doing some of them. One of it is the game of Find It. This is just a simple search and hunting game. So again, normal need for a dog, right? Where we teach them to actually look and search for a piece of kibble or a treat. This can be done in their kennel. This can be done in the dog yard, one dog at a time, of course, safety. This could be done in a training room, an office, right? But you could do all kinds of things with this, hiding it behind chairs, under benches, around a tree. Ladles hung from trees is a really cool one. Under dog bowls out in the yard. So lots of different ways to do that. Group play sessions, I'm sure most of you guys are already doing that. Obviously, it's a terrific outlet, especially for my rigorous players, if we can find the similar play styles with the right size, same size, similar size dogs. The return to the run game. I'm sure many of you have experienced the dogs that balk when they go back to their kennels, right? So finding things, reasons for them to want to go back, and then making it a game, essentially a running game to get back to the kennel is huge. So we run back to the kennel to get our Find Its, to do our Find Its, or we run back to the kennel to get our food toy. Or maybe I have to run to the kennel to find the person hiding in there. Obviously, again, depends on your setup and your routine with people coming and going and other dogs, but there's some really, those are some really, I thought, unique ideas for the run itself. Dog ambassador programs are becoming very popular, right? So volunteers who meet certain criteria and dogs who have met criteria with manners go out publicly, hiking, walking. Signage could be put on them for adoptions. Agility and obstacles. So again, this comes up a lot and people say to me, agility equipment's so expensive, but I don't need equipment to do it. I just need the things around. Food bins, storage containers, right, can be used for tables. I can also take broom handles, mop handles, the long part of them, right, and put them over those for jumps. Laundry bins can be turned upside down. Shipping boxes or containers can be left open for dogs to explore or go through like a tunnel. Used towels and sheets can be put over chairs or benches to create tunnels for dogs to go over, under. Old tires can be used to create tunnels, or hoops. So some ideas to give you guys simpler things that can be used in the rescue as well. And then ball pits are another great way, ball and digging pits at rescues. Digging pits, very simple, as I find many yards at rescues, right, with the dogs in and out, have areas where the dogs dig naturally. We can reinforce that area pretty simply, even if we just have some stones around it, and then we can actually promote digging there. We can hide things there for them to find. Ball pits don't have to be the expensive dogs. We can do donated wiffle balls. We can also do tennis ball pits. Had a friend who worked at a rescue and they were near a tennis court and they left a tub outside of the tennis courts for used tennis balls. Obviously they're heavier, so you can't get them in as tight. It needs to be looser, but it still worked great for the dogs for what they needed. All right, now let's dive into the meat. Our cognitive enrichment component, right? Our engagement component. So this is the fun one, right? When we talk about cognitive engagement, this is about our dogs using their brain, whether we're doing it with games, or we're doing it with toys, or we're doing it with do-it-yourself. But the idea here for our dogs, right? Dogs are smart and they like to do things that are meaningful and things that are challenging. So we want to explore with all of our individual dogs and figure out how we can expend their mental energy, what type of mental energy they have. And of course, this is promoting that intellectual brain, right? That doesn't run off adrenaline, and ultimately going to decrease the likelihood of our dogs developing or trying other things to fill that outlet that we might not want. Couple things before we dive into this. When we talk about interactive options for dogs, you do want to consider the skill level of the dog that's participating. You might need to start really small, very easy. You might need to help them even with things. Safety. So a lot of these will require some kind of supervision unless you have seen your dog, the dog that you're giving the food toy to repeatedly, or it's large enough we're not worried about ingestion. And then also one thing that I did want to mention, I have discovered through some of my research that food toys often specifically like to get stuck in the drain pipes at shelters and rescues. So please make sure you have drain covers, or you think about your drain pipes before providing some of these. I would hate for that to happen to anybody. And then lastly, just so you guys know, again, all of this is ideas for you. Specifically, the toys and games and do-it-yourself have come from a variety of entities and people. We are in no way claiming credit for any of them. I will give credit for any that I have used from other people's websites. But my goal is to simply present a variety of resources for you guys to consider including in your programs, okay? And don't forget, we have a terrific do-it-yourself handout for you as well to go with this webinar. All right, food toys. Let's talk about food. So first and foremost, when we think about dogs before they were with us, right? Did they eat from bowls? They didn't eat from bowls. They had to forage for their food, or they had to hunt it down, stalk it, chase it, right? We should not be feeding our dogs from bowls. Easiest solution out there to add a routine enrichment to our dog's world is to start to feed them their meals from a food toy. One of my favorites, Kongs. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Kongs. This is the Kong Wobbler. The Kong Wobbler is different. It's a hard plastic. And before too, I get a little further, just so you guys know, I've just listed some of my favorites and some of the toys that I personally have found to be extremely effective and easy for my clients. And also, this is based off of the users with GoodPup as well, what they like. So these are kind of the top picks. Kong Wobbler, this hard plastic Kong sits upright. It actually has sand in the bottom, and so the dog has to knock it over to get it to its side so the kibble can come out of that hole. And these are great because they just unscrew, and you can just dump the cup of kibble in, screw them back together, feed your dog. They're terrific for my hard chewers. They're very safe as far as if you get the right size for the dog, not something that would be easily ingested, and super easy to do. I don't have to worry about freezing and making a mess and packing Kongs. So something to consider. Now, if the Kong is too hard for your dogs, Topples, which is a newer one out there, also very popular. These are for freezing items. Again, start easy. You may just need to put food in there to begin with, and then some canned food, and then partially freeze it and then freeze it. But they have a larger opening at the top, and the side hole makes it much easier to get things out and get that same kind of suction I get with a Kong. Slow feeders is another great one. A lot of people, you can just do the regular kibble, but you can make it harder if you will mix it with wet things. It makes it more challenging for the dog to get out. You can certainly make it harder for the dogs if these are too easy by adding puzzles, right? Where you just the dog has to remove various pieces, just like a puzzle, to get to the kibble or the treats. Or you can go to an IQ ball, which is what this is a picture of. You can make this one, you can adjust this one as well. This one is pretty challenging. One of my personal favorites is also this Buddy Barnacle. I like this one for my hard chewers. I also like it for my dogs that get bored because I have 3 different options to mix and match and put things in. If I have dogs that aren't big as far as the chewing, and maybe they need something a little easier, a snuffle mat would work great. We're going to talk about a do-it-yourself one. So these are easy to make. You don't have to purchase them. If you're not familiar with snuffle mats, the snuffle mat is actually designed to be like grass. It just has pieces of fabric sticking up, and you put the kibble and drop it down in between the fabric, and the dog has to forage for it. And then lastly, just as a quick reminder, I did say easy way to get food toys started is with meals, but these are also great interactive toys to have, food toys, I should say, to do during the day, right? So bully sticks, but we always want to be safe with that and have a bully buddy safety device so we don't risk any ingestion of that small piece being chewed on. Marrow bones need to be fitted appropriately to the size of the dog. And the bento balls, they're great. great for my big chewers as well. And once they get all of that in the middle out, I can recycle, I can reuse those and stuff them again. All right, interactive toys that we can play with our dogs. So keep in mind that these toys are desired to require our dogs to participate without a person present, right? And still give them that mental interaction that we're looking for. And often many of them also provide some physical interaction as well. And we can think about our breeds too when we're talking about these toys. So if you have dogs that like to tear things up, pull things apart, the plush hiding toys work really well, like the hide-a-hedgie or the squirrel dude. Dogs that, you know, like to dig and pull things out as well. My terriers really like those. Chase and chomps, they're great for my dogs that like to throw things around with their mouth. These can be pulled off the floor and then tossed and will suck again. Wag gliders is another good one. These are terrific for my long-nosed dogs. They pick up, they can move them, and they slide across the floor. And then other things, what about dogs that like noise? This is a giggle ball. So giggle balls are terrific. My puppies love them. It makes all kinds of weird noise when the dog rolls it across the floor. I will pre-warn you, however, on the giggle balls that if you have a dog that's sound sensitive, it can become problematic. And you may become sound sensitive with your puppy. So be careful. They even have one now out called the Babble Ball, which actually makes sounds similar to dogs. It growls and it barks and plays with the dogs. We have the ball launcher. Oh, there we go, Lisa. Thank you. This is basically an automatic version of fetch, right? You teach the dog to bring the ball back and put it in. There's so many versions of this out there now. And then we also have the self-tug. I mean, there's a ton of available toys out there on the market for dogs. There's even a really cool one now called the Bento Pal Wicked Ball, which rolls on its own and it gets itself out of corners just like a Roomba does. So it's really unique. Okay, games. So let's talk about our cognitive engagement games. Many of these in the right setting can also be done in the rescue environment, but we have a scatter feed game. So this is similar to my Find It game. And what I actually do with this is I scatter the dog's entire cup of kibble for them to go search and find. So you'll have to consider that when and if it's safe, but it's a great game and works really well, especially for dogs in new home environments. Fetch, obviously, is a terrific game for my dogs to have to go out, retrieve, find the ball, search for the ball, and to bring it back. Save your shoulders, get a chuck-it. Scent work, my personal favorite. This does not have to be, there's the National Nosework organization, right? And you can compete nationally and test for nose work. You can also just have a little fun with your dog and teach them the concept of scenting, right? Looking for that. It really just takes treats, a Tupperware jar, some holes punched in it, and a scent. And it could be any scent. It could be a dirty sock out of the laundry, honestly. But you're just pairing the concept of finding the treats. You're pairing that smell to the treat. And then eventually you have the dog search for the scent. It's a great game. Any dog can play it. Again, you have the ball pits and the digging pits available, but I want to remind you guys for these, in order for me to have really that mental part of it, I want my dogs digging. I want them searching for something. So I will put treats in the bottom of my ball pits. For my digging pits, and you guys can see here in this picture, I will actually tend to hide food toys for my dogs. There's a little sand on them sometimes, but it doesn't hurt the dogs. But creating a digging pit is a huge benefit and solves a lot of problems for my dogs, because instead of completely trying to take away their need to dig, I'm providing them a more appropriate place to dig. So this is great, easy to do in certain sections, I would imagine, of the rescue, but something to consider. Okay, flirt pole. I promised you guys a picture of that. If you aren't familiar with it, I did not start using this until maybe a year or two ago, honestly, but any of my dogs that like to chase, right? This is a great one. I actually was able to deter a border collie client of mine from chasing cars by promoting the flirt pole, right? So it's got small fabric and feathers-like things on the end, and the dogs chase it and they can catch it. And then, of course, you'll hear me say agility. This picture, of course, shows a more formal course of agility. We're going to talk about some do-it-yourself, where you can make a really just simple course using what you have around. So let's go ahead and dive into those do-it-yourself ones, because it's really not about finances, right? My goal is to not have people injure their pocketbook. I want to find easy solutions for our clients so that our dogs have that enrichment that they need, right? So that I'm preventing problems and providing them really what they deserve to have. So the first one on our do-it-yourself to the rescue is our recyclables. Everybody has every item in here in their house, I promise. Treasure chest, these are great. This is an old box, paper. You can use any used up paper. Use your mail you tore up and you're going to toss in the trash, wad it into paper. Put it in here, treats in the bottom, have your dogs dig for it. And you can even make it simpler. You could just use a recycled box. The next picture shows a pasta box, right? I do put some holes in all my boxes so the dogs can smell it easier. I do tape my ends shut, just some standard Scotch tape. And then I allow my dogs to like shred these boxes and look for things. Paper towel holders work great. My Anatolian thinks they're terrific. Toilet paper rolls work terrific as well. Cereal boxes, Kleenex boxes, all of those can be used there. Super simple enrichment. Yes, these do require supervision. There are very few dogs I find that won't ingest some of this. So it depends, you need to get to know the dog as far as watching them do this. Other things that are great for dogs, a little bit of crinkle fun, water bottles. Terrific resource. You can use milk jugs, the half milk jugs, and even the quarter ones if you can find those for my big chewers, my big mouths. I'll put it in a sock or an old t-shirt. And they love that cloth on top of the sound as well. Remnant rummage, don't clean your recyclables, let your dog do it. So we have peanut butter jars here. My Dotson sits every day and waits for me to finish my cottage cheese in the afternoon so he can have my cottage cheese jar. There's also yogurt jars, really anything that you think is going to be safe, right? And you could have your dog finish off those remnants. And then last, one of my personal favorite is an adventure box. An adventure box is a little bit of everything, or as my kids would say, it's a box and a box in a box. So it is a larger box. Within that box, packed with paper around it, is a smaller box with holes that tends to have several treats in it. And then within that, another smaller box, generally with a large food toy. So another great way to just, again, add that enrichment for dogs. Okay. Reusables, also that we find in the home. Another great resource for just simple things we can do with our dogs. Muffin, cupcake pans. We can get balls. We put them over the top, treats underneath. I've bought multiples of these at thrift stores. Another option that goes along with that, old socks or old t-shirts. They can be braided and made into tug toys. I can even take old towels and t-shirts, knot them up, and then we can use that as a tug and or a retrieving toy for my dogs. Potters. Oh, I'm sorry. Next I have bubbles. My Chesapeake was a huge bubble fan, obviously within reason as far as clean water, but super simple if you've got leftover washer to just have a little bubble game with your dogs. I used to take my old spatula and dip it in so I could create the bubbles. Potters as well are a great resource if you're getting rid of any to play the shell game or 3-cup game. We'll see a picture of that in a minute, but it's essentially a version of Find It where you hide treats under them, just 1 or 2, and have the dog search it out. And you can really use anything, old mugs, old pots and pans, any of those work as well. Pupsicles, another big favorite of mine. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm skipping ahead. This is, I'm glad we caught this one. So you can take those shaggy bath mats and use them like a snuffle mat, or you could make your own. This is your do-it-yourself snuffle mat. This is actually a door mat with holes. You can take leftover pieces of fabric from t-shirts, towels, make your own cloth, tie it, put it in there, and then you've got a snuffle mat. It's a great project for volunteers and kids. And then we also have popsicles. So my leftover popsicle trays, ice trays, right? I'll put treats in them, freeze it, offer to the dogs. You can even make giant ones like this and put toys in it. There is, obviously, you need to be a little cautious here. Large pieces of ice can be harmful to teeth. So depending on the dog and how they chew, you have to take that into account. And then last but not least, we use what our dogs know. Even if it's just a trick to smile, right? We can actually do cues. We can practice with them. We can build cues on and create behavior chains. So cue after cue after cue and reward it with a large food toy. Super simple, easy enrichment that we can do. Last thing on our do-it-yourself to the rescue are some simple games you can play with your dogs in the house as well. Find It, as we've already mentioned, and this actually shows the picture of the shell game or the 3-cup game, right? So it's a version of Find It. There's 3 cups. The dog is actually searching for which cup has the treat. So that's a great game to play. We mentioned obstacle courses and mazes for our dogs. So you guys can see in this next picture that this person has actually created a maze for dogs out of U-Haul boxes. My kids do this all the time. They build forts and then they have the dogs come in and figure out how to go through this fort, which is the dog maze, and get the treats, right? And you can also just build yourself an obstacle course. You'll see in this next slide several of the visuals that go along with that. So laundry bins, an old box to create a tunnel, a table for a table, a towel for a place. So super simple things. Hide and seek, you hear me say that a lot, whether you're hiding treats or hiding the person, right? But it's about the dog searching and looking. So again, all of these are designed to fill that specific daily normal need that our dogs have. Agility, these are the pictures I wanted to show you guys in the do-it-yourself for agility. So again, you just saw in the other one, laundry bins, but if you get the holes like this, you can actually raise and lower the jumps that you create. The next slide shows our swimming pool tubes that people have used and put together to create weave poles. I mean, they're all together right here, but you pull them out to make the weave poles. Really, any kind of flat, safe, recycled wood on top of something sturdy, even like old tires, you can make a dog walk from. So a lot of easy things you can do to do agility right there in the dog yard with these guys. And agility is a great physical and mental game. And then if I want to play a game of Snafari, I missed this one. This is balance. It's also part of my agility, but it's a balance game. I like to use this a lot with my older dogs because it has a lot of strengthening in the hind limbs especially. But I take old mattresses, sometimes you can use air mattresses even, old couch pillows, and I basically create a big floor of them and entice my dog to walk across. You have to take into account the dog, what kind of health they are in, and orthopedic concerns, but it's a fun game with a nice reward at the end. And then I started to say our Snafaris. So this is an example of how you could create one inside. Just toss a bunch of different things that smell into a laundry bin and let your dog check it out, right? You could do this in a small room or small space as well. And then of course, you can also build your own lure course. So luring involves that chasing, and you can do this with a Walmart bag, any plastic bag, a paper bag, if you want to use cloth instead, but a pretty sturdy string, run it through your house, tie your bag on, and pull it for your dog. So some great, easy solutions to having some fun with your dogs in and outside the home and helping them be mentally and physically stimulated. Now, our last component, and don't forget, guys, we've got a handout on a lot of those as well. Last one, we're going to talk about training. So as you can imagine, this one is one of my favorites, if not my favorite type of enrichment. There's a couple things we want to consider when we talk about training, types of training. We're going to talk about practice sessions, and then we're going to talk about games. And you guys have seen that I've used games a lot in enrichment. That's because games are most of the games are very simple, and dogs love games. They really like patterns, and you can use this to your advantage in so many ways. One thing too I want to bring up on the training part is, while we're talking about adding all this enrichment for our dogs, providing them what they need, there is such a thing with certain dogs of too much enrichment, too much physical exercise. They're just too busy, and for those dogs, these would be my really, really mouthy dogs, my over-aroused dogs, and they're outside jumping on the owners. For these dogs, sometimes I actually need to teach them an off switch, how to just settle. And training is really beneficial for those dogs to teach that. So I wanted to just point that out because we're talking about adding all these things, but sometimes what we need to add is whoa, let's take it easy. Okay, so types of training. We have, of course, private training. So this is one-on-one training, you, your trainer, the dog. There's group classes available as well. Obedience, manners, tricks, nose work. There's leash reactive classes now. There's a ton out there, all available. And then of course there's virtual, which we do here at GoodPup. This can be done in your home. It can be very easy to schedule because you don't have to worry about getting out and about, and it's a lot of less stress on your dog. Excuse me. And one of the things we really have tried to promote here at GoodPup as well is a very engaging homeworks available, or have made some very engaging homeworks available, along with some modules for our owners that they can instantly access right there on that phone. And the reason for that is because it makes it easier for them to practice daily, right? Remember, we talked about routines and the importance of that. Well, practicing, training, it should be part of your lifestyle, right? And we want to promote it and make it as easy as possible for people to do it every day. So that's one of the really nice things that I have loved working on and helping put together here at GoodPup. Now, as far as the style of training, regardless of what we are looking for our dogs to do, we do want to always promote that positive reinforcement, right? So I would love it if every trainer out there used positive reinforcement. Unfortunately, that's not the case. We still have punishment-based training, coercion or balance training, but we should really be striving to promote and incorporate reward-based training so our dogs have choices. Positive reinforcement, it's that methodology of learning that we use to strengthen and teach behaviors by adding a consequence our dog likes, following the behaviors we like, thereby increasing the chance that behavior is going to happen again. And it doesn't really matter if we call it reward-based training, science-based training, force-free, or pain-free. What we want is that positive reinforcement that allows us to clearly communicate with our dogs, to give them a choice to perform that behavior. They want to do it because of what's going to happen, of the consequence, that reward. And that actually gives us a way to influence that choice as well. And because our dog is thinking and wanting to participate, and we've got food and they're making a positive association, that's also all happening with everything around them, with the training session, with their person, and it's ultimately building that bond of trust that we want as well. Now, practice sessions themselves is one thing that we can incorporate daily into our routines. And as I mentioned, we want this to be as easy as possible for our owners, right? We want this ideally to be at similar times during the day. Again, it's about that anticipation, our dog looking forward to doing something with us or you, the owner, right? When we train, it's actually recommended to have shorter sessions versus longer sessions. So short, frequent sessions versus long sessions. You can certainly do long ones. Some dogs like that. But dogs actually do better with short. And I find that for me, at least, most of my clients are much happier if I can give them a short session to work with. It doesn't really matter if I do either one of those. I want to end on a positive note. I want my dog to have found success, for me to have found success. That's really an important part of feeling positive about that. So if you are not succeeding at something in a practice session, you want to actually back up to where you were having success and end it there, and then come back and work forward again the next day. Practice sessions should always be rewarded. A lot of people forget that, but I actually want to reward my dog for working, for trying, for thinking, right? I want them to want to come back and do the practice session again. And I do this very simple. I have people do 4 to 5 minute short practice sessions right before their meal times, same times a day. There's my routine. There's my short sessions. And then I reward that session with the meal, right? Super simple, doesn't take a lot. Everybody can do that. And then last, of course, practice sessions, training in general, it should always on some level be a part of our lives with our dogs, right? It's really about that lifestyle, making sure we continue to engage with them. So important parts of making sure we have those effective practice sessions, especially when we're using them as our enrichment as well. And then lastly, gosh dang, back to games, right? These games are a little bit, they're not as easy as some of the other ones. These are great mental games. These are my top favorite. There's a gazillion games out there. There's different versions of some of these games out there. But I like these specifically. I've had good results with them. Clients like them. And all of these games help cement those manners and obedience skills that we want. Name game, super simple. give my dog, say my dog's name, reward him with a treat. I love this as a warm-up exercise. I can take it anywhere with me. If I'm going out in a public place, I can take it. Helps teach that focus, and I can then generalize it to those other settings. The Smart by 50, this was actually invented by Kathy Steo. This is just 50 kibble, generally is what I do with my dogs. And I have the owners carry the kibble on them. And this is about the owners actually rewarding the dogs when they see them performing a desired behavior without being asked, right? So the owner carries the kibble. You can take it out of their regular food with them around the house on a daily basis. When they see the dog do something they like, they promote it by offering them the kibble. It's a great game. It does a couple things. It helps us capitalize on those behaviors our dog's already offering on their own. It helps the owners also recognize that good behavior, because how many of you see those owners that get caught up in the, oh, this is really bad, right? Some great leash games, red light, green light, and silky leash. Red light, green light, both of these games are really about the leash and helping my dogs get comfortable with leash and leash pressure. So with red light, green light, I like to be inside, non-distracting setting. I want my dog to have been exercised so that they're calmer. And in this situation, I'm gonna walk them through the house. And when they reach the end of my leash, so they're not pulling, they've just reached the end, I'm gonna stop. Red light, I don't move. Again, there's no distractions. There's no reason for my dog to keep pulling, right? I'm gonna wait. I'm waiting until that leash gets loose and I see a J in it, okay? And as soon as I see that J, green light, we get to go. So great game to work with dogs. Silky Leash, which was developed by Grisha Stewart. This game is about that dog learning to be really okay with pressure and to respond to it. And when I say pressure, it's the slightest, smallest amount, because it's about the leash. I want them to get comfortable. I mean, if you think about it, even if you're just walking your dog, on some level, there's pressure, because even if the leash is just hanging on them, there's pressure, right? So this, I clip my leash on, again, non-distracting setting, and I'm gonna be walking with my dog, and I'm waiting for that leash again to get to the end. And in this situation, I'm just going to slightly maybe just tilt my body, just the slightest little tilt, and wait to see if I get any kind of response from my dog. Maybe they move their foot, maybe they just kind of look at me, maybe they completely turn towards me and they get rewarded and we go again. So it's a really nice game to work with on those leash skills. LAT, or look at that's a terrific game for my dogs that get upset about scary things. This is a great game for leash reactivity, so I can go over it further with that question. But we essentially teach an auto watch behavior. When the dog sees what scares them, they turn back, check in with their owner, and get a treat. Okay. And then lastly, round robin, terrific game for recall and for come. 2 or more people standing 10 to 12 feet away from the dog, calling them jackpot. Next person calls them jackpot. Back to the other person, jackpot. Dogs love it. So to wrap things up, we learned a whole bunch tonight. I hope I gave you guys some new ideas, or some ideas that you might be able to modify to work with your shelter, your environment. But enrichment, it's an important part of our dog's life, right? They're part of our world now. We've invited them there. We should make sure that they have that mental and physical stimulation they need. We should make sure that they are satisfied in those specific daily normal needs, right? Because it's going to ultimately affect their well-being, their enjoyment, so being happy and healthy, and it's going to help us as well as them by ideally preventing problems from happening, those unwanted behaviors. So again, I hope you guys have enjoyed this lecture. I am going to put a quick link in chat. This is a document, an enrichment document specific for rescues. It is available by and on Maddie's Fund. We did ask permission to share this with you guys. It's a fantastic document, so please check it out. And then Lisa, of course, will be emailing the PDF that goes along with all our do-it-yourself enrichment items with this program. So thank you for everyone joining us. For those who have to hop off, we will miss you for our questions. And for those of you, I know we had some questions come through, we will probably address those, but I'll turn it back over to Lisa before we get started with those.
Yes, we got some great questions, so stick around and we will talk through those. Before we do that, I just want to quickly remind everyone that you can find out more information about GoodPup and how we partner with shelters at goodpup.com/shelters or by emailing shelters@goodpup.com. We have 3 awesome programs. One you just participated in, our webinar. We also have an affiliate program and our newly launched scholarship programs. If you have dogs in your rescues or shelters that you would like to send home with training, you can do that through GoodPup Scholarship. So I just wanted to touch on all of that. The affiliate program is just your ability to offer GoodPup to all your clients at a discounted rate. They get a discount for life, and you can earn a donation back to your shelter. We'd love to hear from you, or if you have friends or other people in the rescue community who you want to know about GoodPup, please refer them to us. We would love to help them as well. So let me go ahead and stop sharing and we'll talk through the questions if that works for you, Kate.
Yeah, that will be great. I actually just accidentally deleted that link. So I'm jumping into my email to get it for everybody. Okay, it's coming at you guys now. Well, maybe not. I'll send it. Okay, questions while we're sending that. What was the first one? I think that was a least reactive question, right, Lisa?
No, we actually had one before that. Wondered what might be some good ideas for enrichment if there's a higher number of dogs than volunteers.
Oh, that is a good one. Play groups is honestly where I'm going to go with that, which you may be limited on as well. But if you had, I think and I'm just actually thinking off the top of my head, but what if you guys set up some kind of a buddy play group? So not so much a play group, but buddy dogs for the dogs that liked other dogs, right? But individual dogs that could be together, which would maybe help with your time with rotating and play. But 2 dogs might be able to go, especially your small dogs might be able to be in a kennel together and play together, which may save you guys time in the play area outside and give you more to do as well. So that is.
Since I saw that question while you were going through, I was keeping it in the back of my mind as I was listening to all your things too. And again, this one does require some space, but I was thinking that if you were to, have the volunteers set up an agility course and then have the volunteers take 1 dog through at a time, it would help the dog and the volunteers. But you would just have one place that they can do a lot of different things. It's not just a walk. You'd have a setup course. I thought that might be kind of cool.
Yeah, that would also be a great one for the dogs as well. But I like the idea too of that buddy dog, then you have, if you can create friends and they can be put together, right? We can kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone, but agility is another great one too. And if anybody else has ideas or has experienced that and found some solutions, because you guys are the professionals on that, feel free to put it in chat as well.
Awesome. And then, yes, we had 2 people wondering about good ideas for enrichment if they're for dogs that are leash reactive.
Ah, yes. So I will tell you my leash reactive dogs, because obviously for me at least, I'm working on leash skills, right? And how we go out and about and what we do on leash is limited. So those are the dogs I'm going to focus more on my cognitive enrichment. I'm probably going to add more than what I would have for a normal dog during the day. And I'm also going to be doing physical exercise inside the house. That's those indoor activities I would be focused on. Stairs. They would definitely be eating out of every food toy. And those are the dogs too that really do well with games. So the Look At That is an excellent game for that. There's a lot of patterned games out there now available for our leash reactive dogs. All of those games are started inside in a non-distracting setting to begin with. So it's a great way to get started. And then oftentimes I have owners, at least for my part, we start at the door. We start with working at the door and what's outside, and then we slowly step out of the door, and then we go a little further. And then maybe we go to low traffic settings and use these games that I've been using inside the home to entertain my dog. So I hope that answers. I can't remember who that was. Allison?
There was one.
No, it was further up, I think.
Either. But someone asked it, and then someone else said that would help them as well. So I'm glad we were able to answer that. Both.
Hopefully that gave you guys an answer, because we get those. We see a lot of those dogs. And I think too many people end up going down the path of, I have to walk them. I have to walk them. But the fact of the matter is that if you think about the reasons most dogs are leash reactive, it's generally has to do with some kind of emotion, right? Fear, anxiety, over arousal. And so if I can increase my cognitive engagement in the home while I'm take a break from those walks and work to build on games that eventually I could use out there, which are also going to help me with that thinking brain, right? I'm working that side of the brain I want, which is going to help me get in front of that emotion. And that's a huge part to addressing and dealing with leash reactivity. I hope I answered that correctly or well enough that it's understandable for you guys.
Excellent. Okay, then we got into some of the questions around food toys. What are some ways to get a dog interested in food toys? I've tried giving my rescue dog multiple times and she just ignores it, even with her favorite treats are inside.
Well, I don't know which food toys you're using. I will tell you that my rescue ignored everything until I got the topple. And one way you could also get started is so for example, the topple, instead of sitting it upright, sit it sideways and have the treats like beside it, partially beside it. So the dog just kind of gets used to going around it. And maybe you have 1 or 2 treats in it. And then maybe you push those treats a little further. And then maybe we set it upright with a couple of treats in it. And then maybe when they can get those, we actually start to put some canned food in it with the treats, not frozen, just canned food, right? And you're just slowly building on this. And maybe when you finally got to a frozen topple, then you could do a Kong. And when I get to the Kong, because they're harder, I might back up to easy and just do kibble, right? So for many dogs, and some dogs do not like food toys. For whatever reason, given their history, there's something about them that make them uncomfortable. For those dogs, I don't necessarily go for the food toy sometimes. I may try something easier like a slow feeder, but those are also the dogs I do that find it game. And I'll do their entire kibble as a find it game through the house. And it works terrific.
Excellent. All right. Let me see here. I would love some ideas for feeding in the shelter. We always feed meals in bowls. We use slow feeders and Kongs for frozen enrichment, but what are some ideas for feeding a large amount of dogs in-house without bowls? Typically, our feeding is done by one person.
Yeah, and that's what it comes down to, right? Time, people, volunteers. And then you get stuff like Kong wobblers or slow feeders, and you can only have so many, and they're expensive and they cost food. You know, honestly, if this was me and I worked in a rescue years ago, that was actually how I got started in this field. I wonder if you couldn't actually create, like not necessarily a popsicle, but a frozen meal, right? So not in the Kong, but just a meal that has been frozen. Maybe we put them in the bowls and the bowls go in the freezers, right? So then we just pull them all out. And it doesn't have to be hard. It could be to kibble, and maybe it's just a little bit of water soaked in the bottom. So super simple, right? Bowls could be stacked and put in the freezer, or I could actually make some of the food and freeze it and have it where I just pull it out and put it in the bowl as well. Might be another idea. So you could have that in a Tupperware container like that popsicle one I showed you. That was literally just a Tupperware container somebody did and then dumped upside down. And you could do food the same way and just run hot water over the bottom and dump it out for the meals. I mean, that takes a lot of work, but that would be another idea. For me personally, I think if you could find a way to like pre-do the kibble, add a little bit of water, pop it in and freeze a stack of 10 kibble, that would probably be the easiest way to do it for you guys. And it doesn't need to be, you know, completely frozen either, because you get into concerns with ice and stuff. You could probably do this an hour and a half before you feed, right? So just a little bit of a timing. So it's just that partial freeze. So we decrease concerns about ice, but we're still making it a little challenging for our dogs to actually eat. And I wouldn't make it like the water all the way up over the kibble. I'd probably have the kibble and have the water maybe like halfway up. So hopefully that I'm looking at answers and hopefully people are jumping in and
Yeah,
seeing
no,
this.
that's great. But I love the frozen. That's a great idea too, because it would, I think one person could still do that. They would just have to plan ahead. Yeah, if you have to jump off, no worries. We'll just keep going through the questions. I did miss one too, so I want to quickly go back. I fear in a home environment, some of these do-it-yourself options might result in a dog getting into all boxes and Tupperwares.
I have never run into that problem personally, but I do think you could run into that problem. Yes. For me, my recycling is in a separate area of the home. And when I have my dogs explore food boxes, it's done where they get fed, right? So it's two separate locations, and they don't have not connected those dots, right? So if you have a dog you're concerned about that with, I would make sure that we have an established area for feeding and food toys, and that where we keep all these items is somewhere else. It's kind of the same concept as our garbage, right? Because dogs love garbage and love to get into garbage, and it's making sure that it's up and out of sight, and there's some management safety in place to prevent them from getting in there.
I thought about that too when you were showing the laundry basket sniffari. I was thinking, oh, I guess a dog could then think going in the laundry basket's a good idea. But I think that, you could also, there are very different types of laundry baskets. So you could use
There
one
are,
plastic
and
one.
you have to look at the individual dog too.
Yeah.
Years ago, I had a friend's dog who pulled all kinds of intimates out of her laundry regularly, ingested one or two, and had to have surgery, right? And so in that situation, I would never in a million years recommend that kind of search. So it's, the idea is to have ideas and to figure out what will work best for that dog and that owner and their lifestyle. And not all of these will. That's 100% right.
Yeah, and someone just asked another question thinking about safety. How do you keep dogs safe when letting them chew on plastic bottles? Don't they chew and create sharp pieces or just eat some of the plastic?
They can, yes. So again, that's where it comes down to the dog themselves. My Chesapeake would carry around plastic bottles that she'd smushed completely down for months before it got to a point where pieces were falling off and cracking, and then I would take it away, remove it, or give her another one, essentially. There are dogs out there that the crinkle fun is not safe for, and I don't recommend it for them. So it depends on, the dog themselves. I mean, for example, we just took a Anatolian Shepherd in a rescue about 6 months ago. I've never had a livestock guarding dog before, so it's been very interesting. She has learned to, my cat plays fetch with paper balls, right? Tiny little balls. And this dog's huge. Well, she wants to play with the paper balls. So she's now learned to fetch and catch these paper balls, which she could easily just swallow, but she doesn't. She just tears them up. But she enjoys the shredding. She tears them up in these tiny little pieces, this tiny little ball, and then I have all these pieces to pick up. So again, it comes down to the individual dog. Did I purposely give her one of those? No, but she got one, and then that's what she did. And then when I saw she wasn't going to eat it, it was fine. I was fine with it. So you have to play around with the dog a bit too. There are certain dogs that, yes, I won't do the water bottles. And you can also look at your water bottles, right? So, this is one of the ones that I drink out of a lot. This is a sturdier plastic. There's certain those water bottles that have that really cheap plastic. I do not recommend those. I don't do those. And if I get something that's sturdy like this, if I have a dog who's not really sure what it is, I'll crinkle it for them and try to entice them to play with me as well.
All that talk of water bottles made me thirsty, so I had to drink out of mine. Excellent. Thank you. And I'm glad to see Carly just said, gave some advice that her own GoodPup trainer advised when it came to keeping the idea of, a laundry basket as play versus a laundry basket as a toy. So glad to hear. You can tell that our GoodPup trainers have all gone through Kate's training. So that's good to hear. Thank you, Carly, for sharing that. And then I did have one other question, unless I missed anything, which is what would be your recommendation for resource guarding dogs?
Yeah. So resource guarding, the one thing I will say about resource guarders, one of the first things we do with any dogs we get is we work to identify the hierarchy of what they will guard, right? So every dog has low value items they don't care about, and every dog has high value items that we do care about, right? The high value items are the ones really that we just want to prevent. They're not ones we want our dogs to get our hands on. Medium value items, those are the ones that we can work on a lot of desensitization and counter conditioning, right? And hopefully that can be used in an emergency with a high value. But the low value ones would be the ones that we could actually incorporate into enrichment. So safety always has to come first. So the first thing would be to identify what are their low value items. Maybe they don't have any. Maybe we're going to have to go with games instead, games that don't involve a ton of food toys and instead involve treats directly to the mouth. Maybe we have to have more physical exercise than mental exercise, right? But I'd start by identifying the low value, and then you could potentially work your way up, but you could also have some safety too with the medium value ones. If we have a plan where the dog can and is allowed to have that interactive food toy, generally is what I end up with it being a problem. And I will actually teach my dog to exit the area where they have it. They can't come out with it. They have to exit without it. And then once they're out and about and gone, I will go in, close it safely behind me and remove it, right? So we have to strategize a bit and we have to know where their triggers are before we start offering them enrichment.
Great. Okay, so I think we have covered everything. Dex, I see your question as well. If finishing a training session with a big reward, but the dog is a hyper dog that needs to eat from a slow feeder or a bobbler or something like that, wouldn't that just continue to work the thinking brain and not give them an actual big reward at the end? Yeah, I mean, does that make sense, Kate?
I think so. I was rereading this. Well, yeah, it should continue to work the thinking brain, but you have to think about whether or not the dog sees it as a reward, right? And keep in mind that thinking brain is helping our dogs calm down, which can also be rewarding, right? And relaxing. I find, again, stuff like this, these hyper aroused dogs, they need an off switch. And that may help me get an off switch by using that thinking brain and calming them down.
Cool. If I missed any questions, I really did try to catch everyone, but I hope everybody enjoyed our webinar. It will be posted on our shelter's website, and I will send you as well, everyone that signed up for the webinar, a link to the recording, as well as the PDF with the do-it-yourself ideas. And thank you to some recommendations from people in the webinar as well. I also will be editing some of these slides so that even if it's not a do-it-yourself idea, we can include those slides so that you have some of the other ideas as well, just for toy games and things like that. So those will go out tomorrow, but this has been really fun. So thank you to Kate for all these great ideas. And we look forward to seeing you at our next one with subject TBD. So stay tuned for more information about that and have a wonderful night. Bye, everyone.